Maria arrived in America with one small suitcase, a heart full of hope, and a dream that felt too big to say out loud. The air at the airport smelled different. The voices around her sounded fast, sharp, and strange. She smiled nervously at the customs officer, holding out her passport with shaking hands. "Purpose of your visit?" he asked. Maria froze for a second. The words echoed in her mind. She knew them. She had practiced them many times before. But now, in real life, they felt heavy. She whispered, "Study English." The man stamped her passport. "Welcome to the United States." Those words felt like music. "Welcome." Maria smiled. She didn't know what waited for her outside those glass doors, but she felt something inside her chest, like a small fire. She stepped out into the cold morning. The sky was gray, and the wind was strong, but her eyes were full of light. Her new life began in a tiny apartment she shared with two other girls. The walls were thin, the heater was old, and sometimes the city noise kept her awake. But she didn't complain. At night, she would sit near the window, looking at the lights of the city. She whispered to herself, "One day I will belong here." Every morning, she took the bus to her English class. The bus driver said something she didn't understand, and Maria just smiled. Sometimes people laughed softly when she mispronounced words. But she never gave up. Her first English lesson felt like a storm. Words flew around the classroom like butterflies she couldn't catch. The teacher spoke slowly, but even then, Maria's brain was running, trying to understand every sound. The teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves. One by one, the students stood up and said, "My name is." When it was her turn, Maria's heart started to race. She stood up, smiled, and said quietly, "My name is Maria. I am happy to be here." Her voice trembled, but the teacher smiled warmly. "Welcome, Maria." That moment stayed in her heart for a long time. It was small, but it meant everything. Days turned into weeks. Maria learned new words every day. At night, she watched English videos with subtitles. She repeated words again and again, sometimes whispering them in her sleep. She worked part-time cleaning offices after class. The work was hard. Her hands were tired, her feet hurt. Sometimes she wanted to cry, and sometimes she did. But she kept reminding herself, "This is not forever. This is the beginning." One evening, while cleaning a doctor's office, she stopped in front of a photo on the wall. It showed a woman in a white coat, smiling, with children around her. Maria stood there for a long time. Something inside her whispered, "That could be you." She touched the photo gently and smiled. Back home, she wrote in her notebook, "I will become a doctor, no matter how long it takes." Learning English wasn't easy. Sometimes words felt like walls, tall and impossible to climb. But every time she learned a new one, she felt stronger. She practiced speaking in front of the mirror, pretending to be confident. She talked to strangers at the grocery store, even if her voice shook. One day, a woman at the bus stop asked, "Where are you from?" Maria smiled. "I am from far away, but now I live here." The woman laughed softly. "Well, welcome home." That night, Maria cried. Not because she was sad, but because for the first time she felt seen. Months passed. Her English improved. She started helping her classmates who were struggling. The teacher noticed her effort and said, "Maria, you learn fast." You have a gift. Maria smiled shyly. Thank you. I try. But inside, she felt something stronger, pride. She had worked for every single word she knew. Still, life was not easy. Rent was expensive. She often skipped lunch to save money. She missed her family, the smell of home, her mother's voice, her old friends. One night, she got a call from her mother. Maria, are you eating well? Are you happy? Maria smiled through tears. Yes, Mama. I'm happy. I'm learning. I'm okay. After the call, she sat in silence for a long time. She looked out at the city lights and whispered, I'll make you proud. One morning, her teacher announced something special, a program that helped students apply to community college. Maria's heart jumped. She stayed after class and asked, Do you think I can try? The teacher smiled. Maria, you're ready. You have something many people don't, courage. Maria didn't sleep that night. She filled out forms, wrote her story, and prayed silently before sending her application. Her hands were shaking when she clicked Submit. Weeks passed. No news. Every day she checked her email. Nothing. She started to doubt herself. Maybe my English isn't good enough. Maybe I'm not ready. But then, one afternoon, she opened her inbox, and there it was. Congratulations! You have been accepted. Maria screamed. She jumped. She laughed and cried at the same time. Her roommates hugged her, and they danced around the room. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, whispering again and again, I did it. I did it. College was another world. The classes were harder. The words more complex. Sometimes she felt lost again, like on her first day in English class. But this time, she knew she could survive it. She studied at the library until midnight. She asked questions when she didn't understand. She wrote every new word in her notebook, hundreds of them. One day, she got her first A on a biology test. She stared at the paper for a long time. Then she smiled. It wasn't just a grade. It was proof. She was moving forward. Time went fast. Her confidence grew. People started asking for her help, in grammar, in pronunciation, even in science. But Maria never forgot where she started. Every time she saw a new student walk into class, nervous and silent, she smiled at them and said, Don't worry. It will get better. I promise. Then one winter evening, while walking home, she saw an ambulance on the street. A man was lying on the ground, people around him shouting. Maria froze for a second, then something inside her moved. She ran closer, knelt beside the man, and said, Sir, can you hear me? She remembered the first aid training she took at college. Her hands shook, but her voice was calm. Call 911, she said to the crowd. Keep talking to him. The paramedics arrived and took over. One of them looked at her and said, You did good, miss. You helped him breathe. As they drove away, Maria stood in the cold street, her heart beating fast. She felt tears in her eyes, not of fear, but of clarity. That night she wrote in her notebook again, I want to help people. I want to heal. I will become a doctor. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a dream. It sounded like a plan. She closed her notebook and smiled. Outside, the snow was falling softly. The city lights reflected in her window. Maria whispered to herself. This is just the beginning. Part 2. The Fire Inside. The days in college were long and cold. Maria woke up before the sun, walked to the bus stop with her coffee in a paper cup, and whispered new English words under her breath. Her backpack was heavy, but her dreams were heavier. She told herself every morning, "I can do this. I just have to keep going." But college was not easy. The professors spoke fast, using words she had never heard before. Her classmates took notes quickly, their pens dancing across the pages, while Maria tried to catch just a few words. At first, she smiled and pretended to understand. But deep inside, she felt lost, like standing in a storm of voices she couldn't follow. Every day she stayed after class, asking questions in her soft, careful English. Sometimes professors were patient. Sometimes they weren't. One of them sighed and said, "You should maybe take a lighter schedule. This is a lot for you." Maria smiled politely. But inside, something burned. "No, I can do this." After classes, she went straight to work. She cleaned offices and restaurants in the evenings. Her hands smelled like soap and chemicals. Her feet hurt. When she finally got home, it was often past midnight. Still, she opened her books. She read biology words she didn't fully understand. She looked up every new term, wrote it down, and whispered it until it felt familiar. Sometimes she fell asleep at her desk, her head resting on her open notebook. The next morning, she would wake up, wipe her eyes, and start again. One Friday night, her roommate invited her to a party. "Come on, Maria. You need a break." But Maria shook her head. "I can't. I have a test on Monday." The roommate laughed. "You study too much." Maria smiled. "Maybe. But I need to." When the door closed behind her roommate, Maria looked around the quiet apartment. The silence felt heavy. For a moment, she wished she had gone, wished she could just be a normal student, laugh, dance, forget everything. But then she remembered her mother's voice on the phone. "Be strong, my daughter. You have a purpose." So she took a deep breath, opened her notebook, and whispered, "Mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell." Weeks turned into months. Her grades slowly improved. Her English became smoother. But her body was tired. She skipped meals to save money. She stopped buying new clothes. Sometimes she looked at her worn-out shoes and laughed, "One day, I'll buy good ones." One morning, when she checked her bank account, the number made her heart drop. Rent was due in 3 days. Her paycheck wouldn't come until next week. She sat on her bed, staring at the screen. Tears filled her eyes. "What if I can't pay? What if I lose this place?" For a moment, fear took over. She felt small, smaller than ever before. But then she stood up, wiped her tears, and whispered, "I didn't come this far to give up now." She called her boss and asked for extra shifts. He said yes. That week, she worked until her hands blistered. But she paid her rent on time. And that night, she smiled in the dark and said softly, "I'm stronger than I thought." One afternoon, Maria went to the library to study. She loved the quiet there, the sound of pages turning, the smell of books. As she sat down, a girl next to her smiled. "Hi, I'm Lily." Maria smiled back shyly. "Hi, I'm Maria." Lily spoke kindly, slowly. They started talking, first about classes, then about life. Lily was studying nursing. When she heard that Maria wanted to become a doctor, her eyes lit up. "That's amazing," she said. "It's hard, but you can do it." Those simple words meant more than Maria could explain. It had been a long time since someone said, "You can do it." From that day, they studied together. They shared notes, helped each other with difficult topics. Sometimes they laughed over coffee, sometimes they sat in silence, each lost in her books. For the first time, Maria didn't feel so alone. But not every day was good. There were nights when fear returned, quietly, like a shadow. One evening, after a long shift at work, she got her chemistry exam back. A red D stared at her from the paper. Her chest tightened. Her throat burned. She had studied so hard, every night, every break at work. She walked out of the classroom, her eyes wet. Outside, the wind was cold. She sat on a bench and held the paper in her hands. For a long time, she just stared at it. Then she whispered, "Maybe I'm not good enough." She thought about her old life, her family, her country. She thought about how easy it would be to just stop, to go home, to rest. The world felt heavy, too heavy. She sat there until the campus was almost empty. Then she heard footsteps. It was Lily. "Hey," Lily said softly. "I've been looking for you." Maria smiled weakly and showed her the paper. "I failed," she whispered. Lily sat beside her. "So what? It's just one test." Maria shook her head. "No. It means I can't do this." Lily looked at her seriously. "Maria, do you know how many times I failed my math class before I passed? 3. And do you know what my mom said to me? She said, 'Failure isn't the end. It's a lesson.'" Maria looked at her friend. "Lesson?" "Yes," Lily said. "You don't stop. You learn. That's what makes you different." Those words sank deep into Maria's heart. She didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly. That night, she didn't cry. She opened her textbook and began again, from the first page. She studied until the sun came up. Weeks later, she took the next test. When the results came, her hands trembled as she opened them. A B+. She gasped. Then she laughed, out loud, right there in class. Her teacher smiled. "Good job, Maria. You improved a lot." Maria whispered, "Thank you." But inside she said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Time passed. Maria's reputation grew. People started noticing her dedication, her quiet strength. One professor invited her to join a volunteer group at a local hospital. It was just small tasks, helping visitors, guiding patients, but for Maria, it was everything. The first time she walked through the hospital doors wearing a volunteer badge, her heart skipped a beat. The smell of disinfectant, the sound of machines, the sight of doctors moving quickly, it all felt like home. She followed a nurse through the halls, carrying files and answering questions as best she could. One day, a little boy with a broken arm smiled at her and said, "Are you a doctor?" Maria laughed softly. "Not yet." The boy nodded. "You look like one." That night, she couldn't stop smiling. It was a simple thing, but it meant the world. But even when life seemed brighter, darkness still visited sometimes. There were days when the exhaustion came back, stronger than before. Days when she missed her family so much it hurt. One rainy evening, She sat by the window, watching the drops slide down the glass. She whispered, "I'm trying, Mama. I'm trying." And in her heart, she felt something quiet, a warmth, a reminder. She wasn't alone. At the end of the semester, Maria received a letter from the college. She opened it slowly. Inside, it said she had been placed on the dean's list for her academic excellence. Her hands shook. Her eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth and whispered, "I did it." In that moment, every late night, every tear, every struggle, it all made sense. It wasn't just about grades. It was about becoming the person she always wanted to be. She looked out at the night sky and whispered, "This is still only the beginning." Part 3. The Price of a Dream. Maria's hands were shaking as she opened the email. It was the message she had been waiting for. For weeks, she had dreamed of this moment, the chance to apply to medical school. She had studied, worked, and prayed for this. Her heart raced as she read the first line. "Congratulations! You have been accepted to the pre-medical program." She gasped. Her vision blurred with tears. She covered her mouth and whispered, "I did it! I really did it!" Her whole body trembled with joy. She laughed, she cried, all at once. The walls of her small apartment seemed to glow. Every night of studying, every tear, every late shift, it all suddenly made sense. She called her mother that evening. "Mama, they accepted me." Her mother cried on the phone. "I knew you could do it, my daughter. I always knew." For a few minutes, Maria felt like she was floating, weightless, free. But then she opened the next email. It was from the school's financial office. Tuition due, $48,000 per year. The number hit her like cold water. She read it again, hoping she was wrong. But the number didn't change. Her hands went cold. Her smile slowly faded. She whispered to herself, 48,000. Her heart sank. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her dream, the one she had worked for all these years, was finally in her hands. And now, it felt like it was slipping away. She got up, turned on her small lamp, and opened her notebook. On the first page, she had written years ago, "I will become a doctor, no matter how long it takes." Her fingers traced the words. She whispered, "No matter how long, but what if I can't afford it?" Her chest tightened. She felt helpless for the first time in a long time. The next morning, she went to the financial aid office. Her English was good now, clear, strong, but her voice still shook. "Is there any scholarship available? Any program for international students?" The woman behind the desk smiled politely. "I'm sorry. Most scholarships are for citizens or permanent residents. But you can apply for some small grants." Maria nodded, trying to stay calm. She took the forms, filled them out carefully, and left. Weeks passed. Each time she checked her email, her heart hoped, and then broke again. "Unfortunately, your application has not been selected." Over and over. Her savings started to run out. She worked extra hours at the restaurant, sometimes 2 jobs at once. She barely slept. Her body ached. One evening, she sat outside during her break, watching the city lights. The world moved around her. Cars, laughter, people with coffee cups and warm coats. And she felt invisible. She whispered to herself, "Maybe it's too hard. Maybe this dream isn't for me. But then she remembered her mother's voice. When you want something deeply, the universe listens. She took a deep breath. No, she said out loud. Not yet. I'm not giving up. The next day, she made a plan. She listed every scholarship, every hospital, every foundation she could find online. She spent hours writing letters, essays, applications. She stayed up night after night typing, sometimes until sunrise. She didn't know if anyone would answer, but she kept going. One afternoon, after another long day of work, Maria came home to find an envelope in her mailbox. It was from a local hospital, one she had volunteered at before. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter. Dear Maria, we remember your dedication and your kindness as a volunteer. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for our Community Health Scholarship in recognition of your service. This scholarship will cover part of your tuition for 1 year. Maria froze. Then she screamed with joy. She laughed, cried, and fell to her knees. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was something. A sign. A door opening. Still, the road ahead was hard. Even with the scholarship, she needed to find the rest of the money. She took more shifts. She sold old clothes. She stopped buying little things. No coffee, no new shoes, no bus rides when she could walk. People at work noticed how tired she looked. Her manager said, "Maria, you should rest." Maria smiled. "I'll rest when I wear a white coat." But exhaustion has a way of breaking even the strongest hearts. One night, after a 12-hour day, Maria fainted at work. She woke up in the hospital, the same one where she had once volunteered. A nurse leaned over her. "You're okay, honey. Just exhaustion." Maria tried to sit up. "I'm fine," she said weakly. The nurse smiled. "You're not fine. You need to take care of yourself, too." Tears filled Maria's eyes. She looked around. The bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, the calm voices of doctors. "This is where I belong," she whispered. The nurse smiled. "Then get healthy and come back in a white coat." When she got home, Maria sat by the window, weak but thoughtful. Her body was tired, but her mind was alive. She realized something important. She didn't just want to study medicine. She wanted to live it, to understand the pain of others, the struggle, the hope. She whispered, "If I give up now, what will I tell that little girl who dreamed of this?" She closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. "I'll find a way." Weeks turned into months. Maria's determination grew stronger. She started tutoring other students in English and biology. She charged just a few dollars, but it helped. She woke up early, studied hard, worked late, and saved every penny. Slowly, her bank account started to grow again. But more importantly, her hope came back. One morning, she received another email. It was from a foundation she had almost forgotten she applied to. "Dear Maria, we are pleased to inform you that you have been awarded the Future Healers Grant, a full scholarship for students pursuing medical education who demonstrate resilience and service to their community." She dropped her phone. Her heart stopped. Then she screamed again, a sound of joy, disbelief, relief, everything at once. She couldn't believe it. All her sacrifices, all those nights of doubt, it all led here. She fell to her knees and cried, whispering, "Thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you for not letting me give up." That night, she called her mother. "Mama, I got the scholarship. Full tuition." Her mother sobbed with joy. "I told you, Maria. I told you, when you work with your heart, doors will open." Maria smiled through her tears. "Yes, Mama, they did." When the new semester began, Maria walked onto the medical school campus with her head high. The buildings looked tall and intimidating, but she wasn't afraid. She wore her volunteer badge on her backpack, a reminder of where she started. As she entered her first class, she paused for a moment. She looked around, took a deep breath, and smiled. Everything smelled like new beginnings: coffee, paper, hope. She sat down, opened her notebook, and wrote one sentence at the top of the page. "The price of a dream is high, but it's worth everything." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Maria looked out the window, her eyes full of light. She whispered, "This isn't the end of the story. This is the start of something beautiful." Part 4. Trials and Triumphs in Medical School. Maria stepped onto the medical school campus with a mix of excitement and fear. The buildings were tall and intimidating, the hallways crowded with students who seemed to know everything already. Her heart pounded as she held her books close. She whispered to herself, "I belong here. I earned this." The first week was overwhelming. The lectures were long, the professors spoke quickly, and the words sometimes felt like they were bouncing around her brain without staying. She took careful notes, rewrote them at night, and repeated every new term aloud until it felt familiar. Her classmates were competitive. They asked questions she didn't understand. They seemed confident. Maria sometimes felt small, a little girl in a world of giants. But she remembered all the nights she had studied, all the work she had done just to get here. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I can do this." Clinical rotations began soon after. Maria walked into the hospital in a white coat that felt too heavy, carrying a stethoscope she had bought with her first scholarship money. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. The beeping of machines echoed in the halls. Her first patient was an elderly man with a broken arm. Maria's hands shook as she examined him. He looked at her and smiled. "You're nervous," he said softly. Maria nodded. "A little, but I want to do this right." The doctor supervising her smiled. "It's okay. Everyone is nervous at first. Just remember to listen." Maria took a deep breath and listened. She checked the patient's vitals carefully, asked questions, and tried to communicate as best as she could. When the patient left, he patted her shoulder. "Thank you, Maria. You'll be a good doctor someday." Her chest swelled with pride. For a moment, all the fear disappeared. But not every day was easy. Night shifts were long. Maria often slept for only a few hours between hospital rotations and studying for exams. Her body ached. Her eyes were tired. Sometimes she cried quietly in the bathroom after a tough day. She missed home. She missed comfort. She wondered if she was strong enough to continue. One evening, she looked at her reflection in the mirror and whispered, "You've come this far, Maria. You can't stop now." Friendship became her anchor. Lily, her friend from college, stayed in touch. They called each other when exams were hard, shared notes, and encouraged one another. One day, during a long night in the library, Maria met a classmate named Daniel. He was kind, patient, and always willing to explain difficult concepts. They studied together, sometimes for hours without realizing the time had passed. Maria liked the support. She realized that even in a world of pressure and competition, kindness could exist. It reminded her why she wanted to be a doctor, to help, to care, to listen. The hardest day came during her pediatrics rotation. A little girl was admitted with a serious illness. Maria observed as the doctors and nurses worked quickly. The child's parents were scared, and Maria felt a heavy weight in her chest. She had to give instructions, take vitals, and stay calm. Her hands shook as she held the child's hand. The girl looked at her with wide eyes, searching for reassurance. Maria whispered softly, "I'm here. Everything will be okay." After hours of careful attention, the girl's condition stabilized. Her parents smiled at Maria and said, "Thank you, you made a difference." Maria stepped outside, tears in her eyes. This was why she worked so hard. This was why she never gave up. Exams were brutal. Maria studied day and night. She drank coffee until her hands shook, but she never stopped writing, memorizing, and practicing. Sometimes she failed small quizzes. Sometimes she forgot terms she had learned. But every failure became a lesson. Every mistake taught her something new. Every long night reinforced her determination. One evening, exhausted from a double shift at the hospital and studying for a big anatomy exam, Maria collapsed on her bed. She didn't even have the energy to cry. Her body felt heavy, and her mind raced with doubt. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I can't do this. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "You're stronger than you think. Remember why you started." Maria stared at the screen. A warmth filled her chest. She remembered the little girl, the patients, the teachers who had believed in her, her mother's words. She whispered, "I can do this. I will do this." Time passed. Maria began to feel more confident. She learned to communicate with patients clearly, to stay calm under pressure, and to work with her colleagues. She discovered that medicine was not just knowledge, it was empathy, patience, and courage. During rounds, she started answering questions without hesitation. She even helped other students understand complex procedures. Her professors noticed. One of them said, "Maria, you have a gift. You not only understand medicine, but you understand people. That is rare." Maria smiled quietly. She thought about the long nights, the struggles, the tears. It was worth it. One cold winter night, Maria walked home after a 12-hour shift. The streets were empty, and snow was falling gently. She stopped at a small park and looked at the lights reflecting on the snow. She remembered her first day in America, standing at the airport, scared and alone. She remembered every struggle, every failure, every tear. And now, she was here. A medical student. A future doctor. A woman who never gave up. She whispered softly, "I am ready. I will heal. I will care. I will never forget why I started." Months later, Maria helped a patient who reminded her of herself, a young woman struggling to stay in school while working 2 jobs. She held her hand and said, "You are stronger than you think. Keep going. One day, you will reach your dreams." The woman smiled, tears in her eyes. Maria realized something important. Her journey was not just about her success. It was about inspiring others, lifting them when they faltered, and sharing the light she had found. By the end of her first year, Maria had grown in ways she never imagined. Her hands were tired, Her eyes were sore, and her heart had felt the weight of the world. But she was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than ever before. She opened her notebook one night and wrote, "Medicine is hard. Life is hard. But love, courage, and hope make it possible." Outside, the snow had stopped, and the first rays of sunlight touched the city. Maria looked out the window, her eyes full of determination. She whispered, "This is only the beginning. My journey has just begun." Part 5. The Dream Realized. Maria walked across the hospital floor with her white coat perfectly pressed and her stethoscope around her neck. It was her last year of medical school, and she had never felt more ready and more nervous in her life. She passed the classrooms, the lecture halls, the library where she had spent countless nights. Each step felt heavy with memories. She remembered the airport, the first English class, the long nights studying, the jobs, the tears, the failures, and the tiny victories that had built her into who she was today. Her final rotation was in the emergency department. It was fast, loud, and intense. She observed doctors move quickly, make decisions, and save lives. Sometimes she felt small. Sometimes she felt terrified. But she reminded herself, "I've come too far to be afraid now." One evening, a patient arrived, a man in his 50s with severe chest pain. Maria watched as the attending physician gave orders. The man's face was pale, his breathing shallow. It was critical. The doctor looked at Maria. "You will assist. Check his vitals and be ready." Maria's hands shook slightly, but she nodded. She remembered every lesson, every patient she had helped, every failure that taught her to keep going. Her heart raced, but her mind was calm. She checked his pulse, monitored oxygen, and stayed by his side. The man groaned, frightened, and Maria spoke softly. "It's okay. You're in good hands. We are here for you." Her voice was steady, even when her body was exhausted. Suddenly, the patient's condition worsened. Alarms rang. The doctors acted fast. Maria stayed close, helping wherever she could. The attending physician said, "Maria, help me with the 4." Carefully. Her hands moved quickly, precisely. She felt a strange clarity, a calm inside the storm. This was what she had trained for. This was why she never gave up. Hours later, the patient stabilized. He looked at Maria with gratitude. "You saved me," he said, voice weak but sincere. Maria smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "No, we saved you," she whispered. In that moment, she felt the weight of all her struggles lift. Every sacrifice, every tear, every night of exhaustion, it all led to this. After her final exams, Maria received her diploma. She held it in her hands and looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the world. The words on the paper were simple, but for her, they meant everything. Doctor of Medicine. Her family couldn't be there in person, but her mother's voice on the phone filled her heart. "Maria, you did it. You are a doctor." Maria smiled through tears. "Yes, Mama. I am a doctor. And I will make people proud. I will help them. I promise." Her first independent shift as a doctor was both terrifying and thrilling. She wore her badge and walked into the hospital with confidence she had built over years. Her patients didn't know her story, and that was fine. What mattered was that she was ready to listen, to care, to heal. One of her first patients was a young child with a high fever. Maria calmed the parents, examined the child, and decided the treatment. She watched carefully as the child's color improved, the smile returned to the parents' faces. She whispered quietly to herself, "This is why I came here. This is why I fought for every word, every test, every night." Months passed. Maria became known for her compassion, her dedication, and her courage. She worked hard, sometimes sleepless, but always with purpose. She mentored new students, reminding them, "Every struggle is part of your story. Every failure teaches you. Keep going." Her own story became inspiration for others, proof that hard work, courage, and belief in yourself can overcome any obstacle. One quiet evening, Maria sat in the hospital cafeteria, looking at the sunset through the window. She thought about her journey, from the girl at the airport, scared and alone, to the doctor saving lives. She smiled and whispered, "I made it. I became who I was meant to be. And this is only the beginning." The city lights flickered outside, the hospital buzzed softly, and Maria felt at peace. Her dream had been realized, not because it was easy, but because she never gave up. She was a doctor now, strong, compassionate, and ready to face the world. And most importantly, she knew she could inspire others to follow their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. As she prepared for her next shift, Maria looked at her reflection in the glass doors. She straightened her coat, adjusted her stethoscope, and whispered, "Let's save some lives." And with that, she stepped into the bright lights of the hospital, ready to face every challenge, every patient, and every dream that awaited her.